So we are approaching the end of the current story arc that we are in for our Sunday night TTRPG campaign that I run, and I wanted to have a big set piece for the final encounter. It was on top of a karst. But a lot of times buying pre-made set pieces can be rather costly, so I set about trying to figure out how am I going to make my own. For those who don't know, a karst is basically this sort of rock formation. It's kind of like the mountains that rise up like a sideways bread loaf up out of the ground. So I wanted to share the process of me creating this karst from start to finish, and you get to see the final product at the end. I actually have most of the materials that I need to make the karst here, including the paper towel and toilet paper rolls to build out the base skeleton, some of the paint, as well as basic dressings like some moss and some rocks and sand that I'm going to use to gussy it up. But I don't have the most important thing, which is great stuff. I got to go to the hardware store for that. All right, we're at the store. Let's go find some great stuff. While I found two great stuffs, I went with the red one because it specifically says it can be sanded and painted, and that's what I'm looking for. So the original concept is that this great stuff is going to expand and fill in the gap between these two paper towel roll towers that I have made, and I will be able to carve out the rock facets that I want. But I quickly realized that the expanding part of the foam is pushing the two of these towers apart, and so I need to quickly call in the cavalry, at which point I go and get some aluminum foil to help brace it. And as I'm looking at this project, I realize I may have bit off more than I could chew. Alright, so I definitely fucked things up, but when I tried to cover it with foil and I pulled it away, this is kind of like what it ended up looking like. And so I thought, okay, well that's gonna dry at least somewhat how I want, and the foil will give me the creaky rock feeling as well. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to kind of mold it to the shape that I want on top of this with the foil that I used to try and wrap it around. And we're gonna try and salvage this because I don't want to go buy some more great stuff. Now, luckily, tinfoil is one of my favorite materials to work with, and so me molding out more of the basic shape that I wanted with that was not too much of an endeavor. Alright, so I think I was able to salvage it. It still looks like poo-poo caca right now because it's not painted, but I was able to take some of the foiled up foam and kind of sculpt it into the areas that I want. So it's going to look more like a jagged rock face, which is sort of what I'm hoping for, and I'm trying to make as as large of a playable area here as possible. So I'm kind of building up and then supporting it underneath. So it has been dried for a day. It looks a little bit better than I had intended. You can see there's actually quite a little cavern in here that I got one more can of great stuff with that I'm going to fill that up with. I'm going to kind of level this top off. You can't really see, it's a little lopsided. And then we're just going to sort of clean up some areas that need to, and then we'll get to the shaving off. Now, I want to try and get some like little hidey holes in here, so I'm going to try and see if I can navigate that a little bit with, foam coming out of this fucking thing. You've probably noticed a smaller tower that I've also been working on. That one did not make it into the final cut due to time constraints, but my goal is to turn it into something for a future project. All right, we're gonna see how it dries now, and hopefully we'll be able to carve something out of this tomorrow. All right, so we have our giant tower of fleur here. I'm really happy with how this turned out, just because it's going to be easy to sand that down and make it more of like a level playing field, literally. We still got a little hidey hole here that can be carved out, which is nice, and then just sort of turning the rest of these into little rock faces. Okay, so even though it's not completely it's not completely flat on the bottom, it still sits that way, just with the way that everything looks, and I can shave the top to be level, and the uneven parts of the bottom, while some of them might lift up, I can just sort of put dressing around the bottom and cut off certain areas, but It's got a nice profile. It almost looks like Pride Rock if there was like a terrible hag coven happening on top of it. A tumorous Pride Rock, but we're gonna fix that, the tumorous part, in a bit. So let's get to shaving. I should mention, this is not one of my good kitchen knives. This is like one that I got for a part of a set back when I was very young. So go find one at like a resale shop, just part of like a cutlery set, so you're not ruining a good knife. But you still need it to be sharp, like this is for vegetables. So as I'm looking at this with the top, like I'm gonna try and even out a lot of this, but if I can get it mostly level, I'm going to fill in the gaps with things like bushes or actual rocks that are kind of flat on top that people can stand on. And I don't think that I'll have to like go in and be as intricate. At this stage, I am just trying to shave off some of the more bumpy or bulbous parts of this great stuff as it has formed overnight, so that I can give myself more of a faceted rock-like surface for me to work with. I want to make sure that I do the entire pillar before I move on to sanding the top and get a nice, somewhat flat playing surface for multiple figures to have a battle atop. I don't want to brag, but ooh, look at that. That is right in the middle there. Now, to be fair, not all of it is going to be exactly that way. There's going to be little undulations, but the fact that I have at least part of it, yeah, but if I even, oh shit, it's still level. Oh man, okay, I'm actually pretty proud of myself then. All right, so the top is done. I'm covered in this. The top is finished, and now I just have to gussy up the sides here, and then we'll get to coloring and adding all the little kind of like earth bits to it to make it look like a full karst. But oh god, yes. Before I paint it, I am giving some more texture by doing sideways and diagonal cuts on the pillar, which when the paint catches it will look like erosion. As I begin painting, I'm going to be switching between multiple colors, a brown, a black, and an orange. And I realize as I get this first brown layer down that I did not get a tarp, and so I go and get that real quickly before I continue, and now I start to layer in light layers of black, orange, and brown. Alright, so here we are. I think we're towards the last stages of this. I've got a little bit of terrain cover on top, but I still want to add a little bit more of like a lighter gray look to this. I want it to look a little limestoney. It's looking a little red rock right now, and that's not the area that we're in, so I'm trying to make it just a little bit lighter, and then I'm going to add a little bit more terrain pieces. I've got some just little hand paints that I'm going to be using to sort of add the lightness, and I have a little, here it is. I've got a gray spray paint that I'm going to see if that makes any difference either. So here's hoping. And this light paint changes the look immediately. It did start to go on a little thick, so I started to go with a dry brush, and the way that this was layering with the other colors was really turning out nice. Alright, so it's still barely drying because it is very sunny out, but I've got my multiple layers, I've got everything finishing up drying, and so now what I'm going to do is sort of what I did up on top, which you can see I got a bunch of these rocks here, but I filled it with, it's actually dry already, but there's glue here, and I'm just dropping it in. I'm going to put glue into all these little crevices and fill it with rocks and sand and a bunch of this other stuff too. Now, my little box of craft supplies that I have there, I have collected over the years. You can get them at pretty much any hobby or craft store. It's pretty easy to find, but if you're looking for some alternatives, consider picking up actual rocks or dirt or moss and use that instead. Special appearance by my cat. So here is the top where they will all be battling. I tried to make a little bit of a pool here, but it dried cloudy. I'm not I gotta, that's that, but, rocks, we got some little hidey holes. So let's take it downstairs and see what it looks like with everything on top. And here it is, the finished Karst at the gaming table with minis battling atop it. I think it stuck to my original concept of wanting to have a large enough surface area so that I can have a sizable battle atop it. An entire party could fit on here, as well as a large enemy and a few other bits and bobs as well. All in all, I am extremely happy with how this turned out. Now, not including the drying time that the great stuff requires, the time investment that I directly had to put into this project only equaled about 2.5 hours of my time, which for that kind of investment to get this output back, I am extremely pleased. I can use this thing as a centerpiece for years in encounters to come. Well, that's the end of this video. I would like to thank you all for joining me on this excursion into DMing on a dime. I have many more of these projects and other nerdly adventures in the chamber ready to share with you all in the weeks and months to come. While you're here, I would just like to remind you to like and subscribe on the video if you haven't already. Ma'am, I am trying to eat my breakfast and read. Do you mind?